June 2nd, 1899, Volume 2. The greatest favor that can be done for a soul is to make her know herself. This morning my most sweet Jesus wanted to let me touch my nothingness with my own hands. In the act in which he made himself seen, the first words with which he addressed me were, "Who am I, and who are you?" In these two words I saw two immense lights. In one I comprehended God. In the other I saw my misery, my nothingness. I saw I was nothing but a shadow, just like the shadow formed by the sun in illuminating the earth. It is dependent upon the sun, and as the sun moves from it to other places, the shadow ceases to exist outside of its splendor. The same for my shadow, that is my being. It is dependent on the mystical sun god, who can dissolve this shadow in one simple instant. What to say, then, about how I have deformed this shadow which the Lord has given me, which is not even my own? The mere thought of it was horrifying. It was stinking, putrid, all full of worms. Yet in such a horrifying state I was forced to stand before a God so holy. Oh, how content I would have been had I been allowed to hide in the darkest abysses. After this, Jesus told me, "The greatest favor I can do for a soul is to make her know herself. The knowledge of self and the knowledge of God go together. The more you know yourself, the more you know God. When the soul has known herself, as she sees that she can do nothing good by herself, her shadow, her being, transforms her in God, and it happens that she does all of her operations in God. It happens that the soul is in God and walks beside him, without looking, without investigating, without speaking. In a word, as if she were dead. In fact, knowing the depth of her nothingness, she dares to do nothing by herself, but she blindly follows the trajectory of the operations of God. It seems to me that to a soul who knows herself, it happens as to those people who travel in a steamer. In moving from one point to another, without taking a step of their own, they make long journeys, but everything by virtue of the steamer that transports them. In the same way, the soul, by placing herself in God, just like the people in a steamer, makes sublime flights on the way to perfection, knowing, however, that it is not her, but rather she does it by virtue of that blessed God who carries her within himself. Oh, how the Lord favors her, enriches her, and concedes the greatest graces, knowing that she attributes nothing to herself, but everything to him. O soul, you who know yourself, how fortunate you are. June 2nd, 1902, Volume 4. The throne of Jesus is composed of virtues. The soul who possesses virtues makes him reign in her heart. This morning, after I struggled very much, blessed Jesus moved in my interior, and I saw that he was inside of me as though embraced and sustained by someone else. I was surprised at seeing this, and Jesus told me, "My daughter, the interior of the soul is a filling of passions. And as the soul keeps knocking passions down, so does each virtue take its place, accompanied by degrees of grace. And according to how the virtue keeps being perfected, so does grace administer its degrees to it. And since my throne is composed of virtues, the soul who possesses virtues provides me with arms, and with the throne, to be able to reign in her heart, keeping me continuously embraced and courted until I delight with her. However, the soul can't stain herself, while the virtue remains always intact. So as long as the soul knows how to keep it, the virtue remains with her. But when she does not, the virtue returns to me, to the place from which it came. Therefore, do not be surprised if you saw me like this in your interior. June 2nd, 1905, Volume 6, Patience is the Nourishment of Perseverance. This morning on coming, blessed Jesus told me, "My daughter, patience is the nourishment of perseverance." In fact, patience keeps passions in their place and strengthens all virtues. And by receiving from patience the attitude of continuous life, the virtues do not feel the tiredness that inconstancy produces, which is so easy for the creature. So the soul does not lose heart if she is mortified or humiliated, because patience immediately administers to her the necessary nourishment, and forms in her a stronger and more stable bond of perseverance. Nor does she push herself too much if she is consoled and elevated, because as patience nourishes perseverance, she contains herself within moderation, without going out of its boundaries. In addition to this, since patience is nourishment, and as long as one nourishes himself, it can be said that he has life, that he is not dead. In the same way, as long as she has patience, the soul will enjoy the life of perseverance. June 2nd, 1910, Volume 9. The soul must die to everything in order to rise again, more beautiful. As I was feeling very bad, and as if everything was over, I was lamenting to Jesus about this total abandonment by him. And Jesus told me, "My daughter, these are divine ways, to die and to rise again continuously. See, nature itself is subject to these deaths and to these risings. The flower is born and dies, but to rise again more beautiful, while if it never died, it would grow old. It would lose the liveliness of its complexion, the fragrance of its scent. And here is also the simile with my being, which is ever old and ever new. The seed is sowed under the earth, as though buried, so as to make it die. And in fact it dies to the point of being pulverized. But then it rises again, more beautiful, even more multiplied, and so with all the rest. If this happens in the natural order, much more in the spiritual order must the soul be subject to these deaths and to these risings, such that while it seems that she has triumphed over everything and abounds in fervor, in graces, in union with me, in virtues, and that she has acquired as many new lives and everything, I hide myself, and it seems that everything dies around her. I give strokes of a true master, helping to make everything die for her. And when it appears to me that everything has died for her, like sun, I come out. I unveil myself, and with me everything rises again, more beautiful, more vigorous, more faithful, more grateful, more humble, in such a way that, if there was anything human, death has destroyed it, making everything rise again to new life. June 2nd, 1912, Volume 11. Only the things which are extraneous to Jesus separate the soul from Jesus. Continuing in my usual state, I was lamenting to my Jesus for his privations, and Jesus told me, "My daughter, when there is nothing extraneous, or that doesn't belong to me within the soul, there cannot be separation between myself and the soul. Moreover, I tell you that if there is no thought, affection, desire, or heartbeat which is not mine, I either keep the soul with me in heaven, or I remain with her on earth. If you do not sense this in yourself, why do you fear that I may separate myself from you? June 2nd, 1920, Volume 12. Jesus felt the pain of the separation which man had caused with sin. Continuing in my usual state and recollecting myself in prayer, I saw an abyss within me, of which I could not see the bottom. And in the middle of this abyss, of depth and width, I saw my sweet Jesus, afflicted and taciturn. I could not comprehend how I could see him inside me, while feeling very far from him, as if he were not there for me. My heart remained tortured, and I felt the torment of a cruel death. And this not once, but as many times as I find myself in this abyss, as though separated from my all, from my life. Now, while my heart was dripping blood, my always lovable Jesus, coming out of this abyss, surrounded my neck with his arms, and placing himself behind my shoulders, told me, "My beloved daughter, you are my true portrait." Oh, how many times my moaning humanity found itself in these tortures. It was identified with the divinity. Even more, they were one single thing. But while we were one, I felt the torture of the separation and of the abyss of the divinity. Because while it wrapped me inside and out, and I was identified with it, I felt far away from it. My poor humanity had to pay the penalty and the separation which the abusing humanity had caused with sin, and in order to join it to the divinity, I had to suffer the whole pain of their separation. But each instant of separation was a ruthless death for me. This is the cause of your pains, and of the abyss that you see. It is likeness to me. Also, in these times of war, humanity runs away from me as though in hasty flight, so you have to feel the pain of its separation to be able to join it to me. It is true that your state is too painful, but it is always a pain of your Jesus. And I, in order to give you strength, will hold you tightly from behind your shoulders, so that while keeping you more safely, I give greater intensity to your pain. In fact, if I kept you in front of me, by just seeing my arms close to you, your pain would be halved, and your likeness to me would be achieved later. June 2nd, 1921, Volume 13. In coming upon earth, Jesus said almost nothing or very little about his will. I was feeling very oppressed because I was told that they wanted to print all that my sweet Jesus had manifested to me about his most holy will. My distress was such that I also felt restless. And my sweet Jesus said to me in my interior, "Do you want to arbitrate yourself? That's a good one. Just because a teacher has chosen to dictate his doctrine to one pupil, this doctrine, and the good which can be done through it, cannot be made public? This would be absurd and would sadden the teacher. And then there is nothing about you. It is all my doctrine. You have been nothing but a clerk. And just because I have chosen you, you would want to bury my teachings, and therefore also my glory?" But with all this I felt restless. And my always lovable Jesus, coming out from within my interior, placed his arm around my neck, and holding me tightly told me, "My beloved daughter, calm yourself, and make your Jesus content." And my love, this sacrifice is too hard. At the mere thought that all that has passed between you and me has to come out, I feel I am dying, and my heart cracks for the pain. If I wrote, it was only to obey, and for fear that you might be displeased. And now look into what a maze obedience is throwing me. My life, have pity on me, and put your holy hand in this. And Jesus, my daughter, if I want this sacrifice, you must be ready to make it. You must deny me nothing. Now you must know that, in coming upon earth, I came to manifest my celestial doctrine, to make known my humanity, my fatherland, and the order which the creature had to maintain in order to reach heaven. In a word, the gospel. But I said almost nothing or very little about my will. I almost passed over it, only making them understand that the thing which I cared the most was the will of my Father. I said almost nothing about its qualities, about its height and greatness, and about the great goods which the creature receives by living in my volition, because the creature was too much of an infant in celestial things and would have understood nothing. I just taught her to pray, Fiat voluntas tua, sicut in cielo et in terra, so that she might dispose herself to know this will of mine, in order to love it, to do it, and therefore receive the gifts it contains. Now, that which I was to do at that time, the teachings about my will which I was to give to all, I have given to you. So making them known is nothing but making up for what I myself was to do while on earth as the fulfillment of my coming. Don't you want me then to fulfill the purpose of my coming upon earth? Therefore, let me do. I will watch over everything and dispose everything. And you, follow me and be at peace. June 2nd, 1930, Volume 28, How the Divine Will is Peace and Security. Doubts and Fears. Jesus, the only author of the law. Necessity of the comings of Jesus. Lack of confidence, the weak act of our centuries. I was feeling all oppressed because of the privations of my sweet Jesus. Oh God, what pain! Its pain is without mercy, without relief, without support. If Jesus is missing, everything is missing. Therefore one feels that the life of the one who can give life is missing. It is pain that converts the poor human being all into voices that call he who can give it life. It is pain of light that reveals with more clarity who Jesus is. But while I was swimming in the hard pain of his privation, another sorrow was added that hammered my poor intelligence. They had told me that some were doubting about my writings, for in them one could find that Jesus had kissed me, embraced me, and had come to me almost daily. My poor mind could not hold up, and speaking nonsense, I was saying, "See, my love, what it means for you not to make yourself seen and known by all. If you did so, they would be caught in the net of not being able to be without you, and they would catch you into not being able to be without them." I felt tortured by doubts, by fears, that it is not necessary to say on paper. And my sweet Jesus, having compassion for me, all goodness, told me, "My daughter, calm yourself, calm yourself. You know that I have never tolerated in you doubts and fears that are old rags of the human will. My divine fiat, wherever it reigns, does not admit these miseries, because by its nature it is peace and security, and so it renders the soul who lets herself be dominated by its light. Therefore I want from you nothing but that your breath, your heartbeat, your whole being be no other than my will and love. Love and divine will, united together, form the greatest offering, the most beautiful homage that the creature can give to her Creator, the act that most resembles our act. Therefore, let us remain at our place of always loving each other and of never interrupting our love. A divine will always fulfilled and a love never interrupted is the greatest thing that can be found in heaven and on earth. That is only of our divine being, and of one who gives himself prey to our will. And besides, my daughter, why do you afflict yourself so much because of what they said? I am the author of the laws, and no one can subject me to any law, and therefore I do whatever I want and what most pleases me. To dispose of souls, to fulfill with one a design of mine, with one another, is a right that I have reserved to myself alone. And besides, which is greater, to receive me in the sacrament every day, to enter into their mouth, descend into their stomach, and maybe even into souls full of passions, in order to communicate my life, my blood, to mix it with their blood, or to give a kiss, an embrace, to one who loves me and lives only for me? Oh, how true it is that the human sight is short, and they make the great things small, and the small great, for the only reason that they are not common to everyone. Furthermore, everything that has passed between me and you, the many intimacies, the many excesses of my love, my repeated comings, was required by the decorum of my divine will that I was to make known through you. If I had not come often, how could I tell you so many things about my divine will? If I had not made my dwelling in your heart as my living temple, my lessons would not have been so continuous. Therefore they should comprehend that everything I have done to your soul was to serve my divine will, that deserves everything, and it was to serve, in hearing my so many loving condescendences, to make them comprehend how much I love the creature, and how much I can love her in order to elevate the creature to my pure love, and to the full confidence that she must have toward the one who loves her so much. In fact, if there isn't full confidence between me and the creature, they cannot be elevated to live in my divine will. Lack of confidence always places an obstacle to the union between creator and creature. It is the wing clipper of the flight toward the one who loves her so much. It makes her live at the earth's level, and even though she does not fall, it makes her feel vividly her passions. More so since lack of confidence has been the weak act in the course of the centuries, and sometimes even good souls have drawn back in the journey of virtues because of lack of confidence. And I, in order to remove this torpor that the specter of the lack of confidence produces, wanted to show myself with you as all love, and in an intimate way, more than father and daughter, in order to call back not only you, but all others, to live as my children, as though rocked in my arms. And I have enjoyed, and so have you, how beautiful it is to have the creature as all love and all trust with me. I can give whatever I want, and she has no fear of receiving what she wants. So once true confidence is placed in order between me and you, the greatest obstacle to letting my divine will reign in their souls is removed. Therefore, my daughter, I know where my aims tend to, what they must serve for, what I do, great and beautiful, when I choose a creature. What do they know? And this is why they have always something to say about my operating. And not even my short life down here was spared, when my most holy humanity was in their midst, and I was all love for them. And yet if I drew too close to sinners, they had to say that it was not decorous for me to deal with them. And I let them talk. Without giving importance to their talking, I did the facts. I drew closer to sinners. I loved them more in order to attract them to love me. If I did miracles, they had something to say, because they believed I was the son of Saint Joseph. They had to say that the promised Messiah could not come from a carpenter, and they kept arousing doubts about my divine person, so much so as to form clouds around the sun of my humanity. And I aroused the little breezes to get rid of the clouds, and I reappeared more blazing with light in their midst, in order to accomplish the purpose of my coming upon earth, that was the redemption. Therefore, do not be surprised that they have found something to say on the way I have conducted myself with you. And even though they have formed clouds around the operating I have had with you, I will arouse my little breezes to get rid of these clouds. And if they love the truth, they will know that the way I have conducted myself with you, even though I have not used it with other souls, was necessary to our love, because it was to serve our very will, in order to make it known and to make it reign. Then he added with a more tender tone, "My daughter, poor ones, they are not used to walking in the fields of the light of my divine will. Therefore it is no wonder that their intelligence has remained as though dazzled. But if they get used to looking at the light, they will see clearly that only my love could reach such extent. And since I love so much that my divine will be known in order to let it reign, I wanted to be exuberant in the excess of my love that I contained in my heart. Even more, everything I have done with you can be called the preludes of what I will do to those who will let themselves be dominated by my fiat. However, I tell you that all those who had something to say about my humanity when it was on earth, and did not surrender to believing in the sanctity of my works, remained empty of the good that I came to offer to all, and remained outside of my works. So it will be with those who, in addition to talking on the how and the way of what I have said, but if they do not surrender, they too will remain on an empty stomach and outside of the good that, with so much love, I wanted to offer to all. End of June 2nd. Fiat.